Beckman, thank you so much for taking the time for us to conduct a oral history on your memory of the School of Ed. We are so delighted and appreciative of this. My first question to you is, when did you serve as dean and how long did you serve?
Well, let's see. I came in 1985, and I started in the middle of the summer, and I was there until the end of the summer in 1990. So it was 5 years.
Okay. And when you arrived as the dean, were there any unique situations that you faced?
Well, any unique? I had never had a full-time regular position at a college or university. I had worked at one of the regional educational laboratories as a researcher, trainer, developer, etc. But I had never worked in a college or university. I'd gone from being a San Francisco police officer to being a director of projects at Far West Laboratory to the deanship. So it was a totally new environment. I had been actively involved in education because I was an active member of the American Educational Research Association. So through AERA, I'd made presentations and I'd seen schools make, I was sort of familiar with the whole bit. And so I embarked on grant writing. And so the next thing the faculty knew, I had over $6 million worth of external funding, and I was doing the programs I wanted to do anyway. So, which didn't make anybody happy because they had two schools of education, one externally funded and one that was funded by the state. Those were my first experiences.
Could you share some of the programs that you were able to initiate from your external funding?
The one that I was most proud of was developing something that we call Faculty Development Center. It was centers, I had two. I had one in Manhattan and one in the Bronx. And those centers were funded by the Danford Foundation. And they were very interested in seeing whether or not we could take regular faculty members who had moved into, let's say, high school assistant principal or principal, and develop them into educational leaders. And because there were so many issues in New York City that they had to challenge. You had the language issues, you had the diversity issues, you had all of the stuff that was coming from, in quotes, radical groups that we developed, and we called them principal centers. We had two of them, one in Manhattan and one in the Bronx. And they turned out to be really positive experiences for both the school districts and the state. And I was thinking, because your wonderful governor has been in the news recently, I was thinking about my last meeting with his father was at the World Trade Center. And we were talking about disseminating that training strategy across New York, because there had been a lot of issues upstate New York in desegregating the schools. And he was trying to see if there could be developments that would assist those principals in running or managing those schools. So that was my last time meeting with him. I talked to, and there's a Black lady, I'm not gonna think of her name, and she used to talk to me. I think her husband was a medical doctor. somewhere. And she came and she sat down with me, she said, Dean Beckum, the problem is that you're making so many changes, just like lightning striking. I mean, we just can't handle all this lightning. I didn't have anybody who really objected to what I was doing. It was just the turnaround was so rapid. The turnaround was just too quickly. I think the persons who grasped it the most was the special ed group. And we did a lot of stuff to try to change the way the special education was done out of the school of it. Anyway, it was a fun time for me. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was enjoying. I was enjoying.
Hey, could you elaborate just a bit more on the work you did with the special ed? Do you
Well, one of the things that we had to help students learn was how to do assessments. And, you know, that's one of the more challenging. You had language issues, you had real developmental issues, you had lack of experience in doing it. And you got these students. I mean, the School of Education, I don't know what size it is now, but as I recall, it was like graduate and undergraduate, about 5,000 students. There was a whole bunch of people. And we had a special program in the School of Education and this is the thing when you asked me, what did I like about with the City College? It was a program designed to help underprepared students get prepared for college. I can't remember the name of it now, but we moved a number of students through that program into the regular School of Education. And so one of the challenges is not overwhelming the students with what they ultimately learn how to do, with all of the things that had to be done as they got acquainted with their work. It was quite an experience, yeah. But when Nelson Mandela made his first visit to the United States, Ted Koppel interviewed him at the auditorium at A. Philip Randolph High School, and his program people invited the deans of City College to be the platform guest. So I got to meet Nelson Mandela, which ultimately turned into my going to South Africa. This was 1991. I was at Duke then, so I spent 6 weeks over there helping them put together an affirmative action program for the state. So everything just evolved into all sorts of stuff. It's amazing, just amazing. I had a wonderful, wonderful growing up experience at City College. And one of the other things, and this is sort of, you asked about programs, we adopted a program called the NASA Center. I'm not sure if it's still there now or not. It was called the NASA Center. And the NASA Center was a place that the NASA sent specimens that they had picked up in their various stuff. And it was in there, and they would come. And the thing that was so wonderful about it is astronauts would come to City College. They would helicopter into the football field and then come over and spend the day at City College. They would meet with faculty, because the people who were primarily involved in that coming to the center was external teachers who taught science, and they would come there to get some ideas about how to do whatever. And I met 2 or 3 astronauts as part of that process. So it was just unbelievable. Person during my 5 years there for the Boys Choir of Harlem, I would help them put together their educational programs that the kids would participate in while they were traveling around. I mean, there was just so much going on in New York. I tell you, it was just a wonderful place. At the time I came to New York, the crack cocaine was one of the big issues for kids in schools. And that was a guy who wanted to support kids in school. And he created a scholarship, and I helped him design the scholarship. We put it together, and he would come over to City College and he would adopt Eugene Lang. Eugene, when I talk about it a little bit, the names come back to me. His name, he was Eugene Lang. And he put together a program that took kids at 7th or 8th grade, I forget which, supported them through high school and into college. That was another just wonderful program. We got to know a lot of teachers in New York at the time and help parents. Well, we were in this brand new building across the hall, across the street there from the president's office. It was, I thought, I don't know, I think it was a new building. I'm not sure.
Was
It
that
probably already occurred because, see, I came there in like July of '85, and I left there in, let's say, July '90. And so that was nothing there that I can't remember any construction, and we seem to be in a pretty stable place. There was a place called the Workshop Center, and I can't think of the two people. There was a black guy from Africa and the dean, the chair of his department, who were very active in that. Had a lot of interaction with them because trying to get things changed from the way they had done the Workshop Center in such a small level. And that seemed to be such a large need. And I was willing to give some of the City College dean's money to do it. No, we had a lot of conversations around that. I can't remember her name. She is a very active person.
Was that Hubert Diossi?
Doris was the guy from Africa, and there was a white woman who was the chair of his department.
Was that Lillian Weber?
Yeah. No, wait a minute now. Lillian was there. Lillian was a stable body in that whole thing. She was not too riled around. There's another person, though.
I don't know.
There was another person in there who was chair. I don't think Lillian was chair. I don't remember, that's been 100 years ago.
and what happened? What did the Workshop Center do? What were some of their initiatives?
Well, I think they did what a lot of places do now. Again, it's been such a long time. I don't remember this training effort where the people that would come in and try to help teachers develop more skills in working with diverse student bodies. And I think that's what it was, as I can recall. Yeah.
I think you've given us so much. The last question I have is, how do you feel the School of Ed has made an impact on public education or on New York City and beyond? What do you see as the impact of City College's School of Ed?
Well, at the time, and see, we're talking 40 years ago. Is that 19? At the time, I think we were very instrumental in creating discomfort and letting things be as they were. Especially the training programs, the workshops, I don't know all of the curriculum issues that we had an impact on, but we made it uncomfortable that simply because the kids in the Bronx came from poor families, that they couldn't be expected to do as well as others. And that because the Bronx was not where all of the banks were, didn't mean that it wasn't a place that people ought to give a lot of attention to in terms of their educational needs. Um, it was a very, very challenging time because you weren't just talking about skills. I mean, the faculty at City College was skilled and knowledgeable people, but you were talking about will and resistance. Am I willing to put myself up against this way things are? And you know, it is very challenging to people to drift into the unknown and leave my comfort zone. And this is one of the things that I made them so uncomfortable, because I was constantly saying, if it's now what you're doing and you aren't getting the outcomes you want, don't you think you should be thinking about doing something different? They said, no, I'm going to retire in 5 years. What? So these are the kind of conversations we had. And of course, that had a really dynamic group of people who analyzed credentials for kids who wanted to come in. There was, I forget what that center was called, but there were about 5 or 6 people who decided if they were at the level, what level they were at, and so forth. And we did a lot of work trying to get people to realize that you're in a privileged position to create a better dynamics for students who don't even know that a better dynamic exists. So use your skill and use your knowledge to try and help those students and their families. Leonard was in it if it was occurring. And I had cultivated with the churches and the politicians and with the union. I mean, the teachers union was really strong in those days. They still are, but they were really strong. And I worked out a relationship with them. Anyway.
It sounds as if you really shook things up. You shook things up when you were at City College.
I did. Well, my philosophy was, if I was blessed to be at the forefront of something, I should use my knowledge, my skills, my energy, etc., to do the very best I could, given my knowledge of what the issues were, and for the betterment of people. And that's, I really worked at that. I was very, 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 very important thing for me. I was all over the place.
Thank you.
All over.
Thank you so very much for this wonderful interview. It was so very insightful and rich. Thank you very, very much.